This video is going to be about how to compare fractions using Singapore strips. Now, up to this point, I've been calling them fraction bars, so you may not know what Singapore strips are. They're just the fraction bars that we have been using in class. Now, to compare them, let's say I wanted to know which one was bigger, 6/8 or 2/3. I would need to draw these Singapore strips. Like I said, they're just fraction bars. Since I'm comparing two fractions, I'm going to draw one big rectangle. And inside this rectangle, I'm going to split it in half. The top bar, let's say it's going to belong to 6/8. This bottom bar, it's going to belong to 2/3. It doesn't really matter which one you draw on top and which one you draw on bottom, as long as both of them are inside the bar. Now, I'm going to do with my eighths here. Start with half, cut each half in half to get fourths. Now, this is where it gets really important that you make fair shares. If your pieces are not equal, erase and make it equal. As we start comparing fractions more, you will notice sometimes how small apart these fractions are. And so the more fair your shares are, the better off you will be. Okay, there's eighths. 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8. Now, I'm going to cut the bottom one into thirds. Sometimes it helps to cut off, like to cover up the top bar to help you draw that bottom bar so you don't get confused. And there's 2/3. Now, I'm going to look at my bars and I'm going to look at where the bars actually end. 6/8 ends right here where the blue is, and then 2/3 ends before that. So looking at this picture, I can clearly see that 6/8 is bigger than 2/3. But let's look at another one. Let's look at 2/4. And I'm going to compare it to 7/8. Again, I'm going to draw my big rectangle box. And I'm going to put both fractions on the inside here. We'll make this 2/4, and we'll make this one 7/8. Now, I am very, very lucky because 4 is half of 8. So these fourth bars, I can just pull down into the eighth bar. And so now I know at least my fair shares are the same for the fourths. And then I can just divide my fourths into half. I'm going to color my top 2/4 and my bottom 7/8. Now, just by looking at this, I can clearly tell that 7/8 is bigger than 2/4. But let's look at an example where we have to compare more than two fractions. Let's say we have to compare 3. So we need to compare 1/4, 3/8, and 5/6. I'm still going to use that big square, or rectangle really. But this time, instead of having 2 bars inside of it, I'm going to have 3. Now, I'm going to look at my fractions here, my 1/4, my 3/8, and my 5/6. And I'm going to look at the denominators, and I'm going to ask myself, are they related in any way? Well, the 4 is half of 8. So I'm going to actually put the 1/4 and the 3/8 right on top of each other because I can use the 4th to help me cut the 8ths. Now, my 5/6, there's nothing that I can use from the 8ths or the 4ths to make 6. So I'm going to put it at the bottom. I'm going to start off with my 4ths, cut in half, cut my halves in half. There's 1/4. I'm going to bring down those 4ths, and then I'm going to cut each one of those in half. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to color in 1/4, and I'm going to color in 3/8. Now, I'm left with my 5/6. I'm going to cut into thirds. I'm going to cut each third in half. And I'm going to color in 5/6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, I'm going to look back at my fractions bars here, my Singapore strips, and I'm going to order them from greatest to least. Well, looking at it, 5/6 goes out the farthest. So that one obviously is going to be the first one. Then my 3/8, because it ends right here. And then the last one, the smallest one, 1/4. And that is how you compare fractions using Singapore strips.